Hi everybody, thanks for joining us today for our Ask the Expert session. Cameron is going to be answering some questions that we've had through from businesses. Some people are available to be here with us asking questions. Everyone's anonymous, so feel free to ask away. The reason we decided to run this session is because there are so many changes with Immigration New Zealand recently, and we've been inundated with questions. So I know how I'm feeling. I'm not an immigration expert. I'm married to one and I still don't understand it. So on behalf of the People Inc. group, where we provide workforce solutions to businesses, we're going to cover immigration today. There have been a lot of changes. So Cam, I'm going to be firing a whole lot of questions through to you. Daniel submitted a question in regards to hiring migrant workers. What exactly are the business registration requirements these days?
Okay, so I assume that we're looking at accreditation.
Yeah.
And just in terms of getting a business accredited or renewing accreditation, nothing's really changed. It's all stayed the same. The focus around new accreditations has been around the financial requirements, and if you're renewing, it's the financial requirements as well as the settlement information that needs to be handed out. So the financial requirements are pretty basic. You've got 4 ways of meeting it. The 24-month criteria where you haven't made a loss, positive cash flow over the 6 months. If you can't do that, you've got the sufficient capital or external investment criteria. And lastly, you've got the minimum 2-year plan. So what we're finding is that businesses that are declaring that they've been operating for more than 24 months and they've not made a loss, those applications are pretty much going straight through. Really light touch from immigration. The companies that are using the 6 months cash flow are getting asked for the evidence of that, which is pretty straightforward. It's just a report from your accounting software. The ones that are trying to meet the sufficient capital or the 2-year plan are being asked for quite a bit of evidence. So not just evidence of the sufficient capital, but evidence of how much it is costing you to run a business. So just be mindful of that. And there's no set amount that you have to provide as sufficient capital. So immigration state that a viable and ongoing business or evidence to show that your business is viable and ongoing is for you to be able to meet financial obligations such as paying wages, salaries, or other operating expenses. Hence, they need a bit more evidence than just sufficient capital and when you're going to apply for accreditation. Just in terms of the renewals, the settlement information, that requires employers to provide settlement information to AEWV holders within 1 month of commencing employment. It's been a little bit of a problem with renewing accreditation, but you must be mindful of it. If you need the link, let me know. I'll send you the link to the information on the immigration website. If you've recruited through us, then we provide each worker with a settlement pack, so they are all covered. So that's that.
Cool, thank you. So another question that has come through, and it's something that also confuses me. There's an ENSCO. Everybody knows the good old ENSCO, but now there's a NOL as well. So why do we have to, and what's the difference between the two?
So the National Occupation List is the NOL. That's the newest list that we've got for immigration. And that is slowly being brought into immigration policy. So we've seen a list of occupations come out that can be included for AEWV applications. And I think they've done that twice now. So there's a wider range of occupations. The NOL, and this is really important, the NOL is not in the residency criteria yet. So it's not been put into residency. It is purely only in the AEWV criteria. So we're still using the ANSCO. We use 1.3 in most of New Zealand's applications. And what you'll find is that some AWB holders are in occupations that might be considered ANZCO 4 to 5, but the NOL now has that occupation either in a higher occupation, or there's a different occupation in the NOL that they could apply for, which is still a substantial match to their job. And so therefore you can move AWB holders who are holding 36-month stay visas and put them into a higher skilled role and extend their visas for 2 years.
Cool. Okay, so that's still quite confusing. If you've got questions, feel free to reach out, because that one does confuse me as well. We've had a question through from Carl. He's asking, what are the available pathways to residency for those employees who are currently on a work visa? We have got 90% of our employees in this position with just over 2 years left on their visas. It's going to have a huge impact on many manufacturing businesses in New Zealand, which is so true. I mean, we've got businesses contacting us all the time. So what can we do to help Carl?
So with residency is tough. It's deliberately tough. The government have really wanted to reduce numbers. We don't currently have a target number in New Zealand, but they've got some estimates of the numbers that this current criteria would bring in, and it's low. So it's deliberately tough. They have opened it up slightly, and these 2 new pathways that are coming into effect in August are going to change things slightly, but not on a major scale. So the way I look at it is firstly, ANZCO 4 to 5, if anybody's in an ANZCO 4 to 5 role, it's going to be incredibly difficult for them to get to residency. So that's the first thing, is see if we can move these guys out of 4 to 5 roles and into 1 to 3. If you can't do that, you've got to pay a high wage. That's all we can do to give them a pathway to residency. So a lot of 1.5 times the national median wage is unrealistic for some occupations in the 4 to 5 occupation or skill level zone. So the way I look at it is it's pretty simple. I guess this is an overview of how to assess which pathway to take. And if they're in a 1 to 3 occupation, so skill level 1 to 3 occupation, and they have a bachelor or higher degree, you're looking at SMC. That's really simple.
Skilled migrant category, for those that don't know the abbreviation.
Thank you. I live in acronyms. Sorry. If they're in any skill level and they earn 1.5 times the median wage, that's SMC as well. If they are in any skill level and they earn 2 times the median wage, that's possibly work to residence, WTR. So that's a 2-year pathway to residency. Any skill level and they hold occupation registration, you're probably looking at SMC. If they're in skill level 1 to 3 and they hold a relevant level 4 or higher qualification, you could look at the new trades and technicians pathway, or the skilled work experience new skilled work experience pathway. For guys that are in New Zealand currently, you're going to be looking at the new work experience pathway rather than the trades and technicians, because trades and technicians ask for post-study post-qualification work experience. And that makes it really tricky for guys that are in New Zealand that don't have the qualification but could study towards it. Anybody that's got an occupation on the green list in the tier 2 list, or healthcare transport, there's WTR. Any skill level occupation, any skill level and has an occupation on the tier 1 list, well, there's a straight to residence application. And if they have a New Zealand partner or a citizen or a resident partner, then maybe that's partnership. So that's a pretty high level overview of resident pathways, and obviously there's lots of other requirements to meet within those pathways, but one of the most important is probably the wage, and that's what you really want to look at is do we have them on the right wage to be able to provide that pathway or create that pathway to residency. So at the moment, the national median wage for skilled migrant and trades and technicians is $35 an hour. It's the new median wage. So you must have them at least on there. If you want to do 1.5 times, it's $52.50 per hour at the moment. And the work experience pathway, which is 1.1 times the national median wage, is $38.50 per hour. So you can see that they're quite high wage requirements if you want to get them onto certain pathways. On top of that, they might have to work for a certain period of time on that higher pathway, or on that higher wage, I should say. So that you need to bear that in mind. And if you're having trouble with figuring out whether somebody's going to be eligible for residency, or you want to put them on the higher wage, but you're concerned that they might not meet other criteria, then they really need to undergo an assessment. So I would send them our way and let us just assess their individual circumstances before you put wages up. And on top of this is the English requirements are quite high. So they might have a couple of years left on their visa right now. It's a good time for them to go through English language courses now, and they've got enough time to get their English up to scratch.
We can help with the English language courses as well, to get the guys to the level that they need to be at. We have a trusted provider that we do work with. Another question, Cameron, if I do it myself, what are some of the common challenges I'm going to find? This is one of the questions that we have had through. I guess it's relating to people drafting their own ads, thinking that they're suitable because it's a typical ad that they'd normally draft. And we see it all the time. The ad doesn't meet the requirements, and then they need to go back and start again. Then there's another 14 days. So what, off the top of your head, what's some of the most common mistakes employers are making through this process when they're trying to save money and do it themselves, but they're not the expert?
Yeah, I find the most issues that we see is in the job check. So and it's usually when you find your own candidate. We find that either the candidate doesn't meet minimum skills for say an accredited work visa, or the job check in the advertising has certain requirements that candidate doesn't meet. So when you're setting up a job check, and you've got a candidate in mind, you're setting it up for that candidate, but balancing that with the fact that you must make genuine attempts to find a New Zealander. So it is a balancing act, and sometimes you need to lower your threshold of requirements down a little bit in order for the candidate to meet the requirements. So that's number one on the hit list of do-it-yourself AEWV is the job check. That's the most issues we find. Residency, I'd never recommend anybody to do it by themselves, especially if you're talking about wage thresholds and the time that you have to spend, the years that you have to spend on that certain wage threshold. It's more in depth than people really care to think about.
It changes all the time, it seems.
Yeah, it is changing, but yeah, there's just criteria. I mean, the suitably qualified criteria is going to catch people out in August this year. That they're going to reduce, for skilled migrant, they'll reduce the work experience required for somebody, say, that holds a bachelor's degree, and they'll reduce it down to 18 months work experience. Great, somebody's going to be eligible and try to apply. But actually, the ANSCO that they use might require 3 to 5 years of relevant work experience, or a bachelor's degree, or something like that, and they don't have it, and so they don't meet. So they've got the points, but they don't meet skilled employment. And so their application fails. And we're going to see this time and time again after April. It will be carnage. So yeah, just the do-it-yourself SMC applications, yeah, I'm not going to recommend that whatsoever. There are certain parts of the application you could do yourselves, but yeah, it's scary.
Cool, thank you. We've just had a few people jumping in the last 5-10 minutes. Guys, if you've got a burning question, chuck it in the chat. We have a list of questions that we're working through, but feel free to add anything else into this so we can answer your questions while you've got an experienced LIA here to help. Okay, so coming back to my question list, and this is really common, we see it all the time. I found a migrant here in New Zealand, they're on a working visa. what do I do now?
Yeah.
Panic.
Yeah, call me.
Yeah.
Call me before you do anything. Yeah, this is a common issue. Is that employers? There's lots of people floating around New Zealand. Lots of AEWV holders, visitor visa holders, maybe working holiday. They're around, and you might find one. The main issue that we're finding is minimum skills threshold. So the minimum skills threshold is something that is applied to most AEWV. I'm going to say 90% of cases in AEWV. So you've got to check the minimum skills threshold first. So I tell our clients to speak to the candidate and ask them for evidence that they meet the minimum skills threshold. If they're relying on their evidence of work experience, then see it. Don't rely on a CV. Ask them for a work reference, ask them for pay slips, ask them for tax information, ask them for as much evidence as you can to prove that their work experience is genuine. An employer must do that anyway when hiring an AEWV holder. They must do a thorough recruitment process, and it's in immigration instructions now. So it's a part of your due diligence, and that's the first step. I don't even look at accreditation or a job check until I know that that candidate is going to meet minimum skills. And if they do, then you've got a couple of other things after that, where if they're relying on a bachelor degree that's not relevant, or a higher qualification that's not relevant, and they don't have work experience or relevant work experience, then you've got a little problem on your hand when you're doing labour market testing for this, because you can't advertise for 5 years of relevant work experience because they don't have it. So you're going to have to run a job check that has no work experience, and you might say, a relevant qualification would be preferred, but that's going to open up your job check to a lot of unskilled New Zealanders who are not suitable for your job, but you've had to lower the requirements down. So if you find that you've got a candidate and they're using a qualification to get through, if it's not relevant and they've got no relevant work experience, it could be an issue.
Yeah. And that's one of the most time-consuming parts of the process we see sometimes, is the unskilled workers coming through from New Zealand that are applying for jobs because the threshold is so low. And that in itself takes time, because you have to give each person the opportunity to be screened and go through the process. Okay, so another question that's pretty popular these days is, what's the impact of the median wage change?
Okay, so 9th of March, median wage has changed, $35 an hour now. Now, just looking at AEWV, it doesn't change anything in terms of, we don't have the median wage in AEWV anymore. So you're just paying market rates now. So you can pay less than the median wage as long as that's within market rate. The problem with doing that, though, is that it's not creating them a pathway to residency, most likely. So you just got to be mindful that, it could be a starting rate, but if you eventually want them to get to residency, you might have to bump that up a bit. When we're looking at residency, it's affected across the board. So say you've got an employee, they're on a residence pathway, they don't need that bump in their wage to keep, they don't need to keep up with the median wage. So in saying that, they still need a bump in their wage to apply. Now that's changing in August, because it's a stupid rule. So right now, if you've got an employee eligible for skilled migrant category, and they go to apply, they must have the national median wage at the time that they make that application. And they could be meeting the requirements on 33.56, which is the last median wage. That's not going to meet the requirements when they lodge the application. But this change in August, which is really common sense change, means that if they did rely on the 33.56 for their work experience, and they've done their 2 years or whatever it is, then they don't need the current national living wage to apply. So that's a really good change. But the wage change has meant that wage thresholds have moved. So if you've got employees who haven't activated their work to residence pathway because they never received the wage that they need during the time that it was available, you're now paying a higher rate to just activate that work to residence or that skilled migrant work experience pathway. So that's just something, gone from $33.56 to $35. It's a bit of a change. So that's where the main the median wage is going to affect a lot of employers.
Cool, thank you. Next question, and this is something that we see often as well, is you've found a migrant worker, they've been working for you for a long time, and then they want to bring their brother and their other brother and their cousin over, and you're desperately, as an employer, wanting to help them to bring their family over. So the question is, my worker desperately wants me to have his two brothers come to New Zealand. What should I do? I need help.
Yeah, brothers are really tricky. There's no family kind of sponsorship happening there, so they can't just bring them in. I guess my standpoint in these kind of cases is that, firstly, can they meet minimum skills for a work visa? Do they have sufficient evidence of their work experience? Or, we need to check that before they even think about coming over. When the borders first opened, those rules didn't apply. So everybody that just came to New Zealand was eligible for a work visa. It didn't matter what their background was. But since April 2024, that's changed, right? So you've got to check the minimum skills threshold. You don't want them coming over, and this is what we see. They come over on visitor visas, and they come to look for work, and they find an employer, and the employer goes, "Yeah, this sounds great. I'm going to employ you." And then we tell them, "Oh, hang on a minute, he doesn't meet minimum skills. It's not happening." And when he doesn't meet minimum skills, if he doesn't hold a bachelor or higher degree, he doesn't have a level 4 qualification, and he's just relying on some work experience, he might not meet minimum skills across the board for any job, and therefore he's going back home. So it's a complete waste of time to come to New Zealand to look for work if you're not eligible for a work visa at all. So that's the first thing to do. Check minimum skills. The next thing is that it's I don't want them to come here as visitors and then for them to apply for a work visa. It's risky. You can never guarantee that a visa is going to be approved. So my advice in that situation is if an employer is willing to offer employment and they've got getting accredited and they're going to do a job check, do all this while overseas. It's a simpler way of doing it. Obviously, getting the job offer is the problem for the brother. But if if you as an employer want to support it and they have got relevant work experience or bachelor's degree or something that's going to meet minimum skills, okay, do it. But try and do it while you're overseas.
Yeah, cool. So we see on a regular basis square peg, round hole. Hey, people trying to shove a square peg into a round hole, and it doesn't always end well.
Sometimes I can push pretty hard and it works, but a lot of the time
legally.
So well, there's always relevance is a broad a broad subject. So sometimes you can squeeze a little bit, but it becomes to a time where it's just not worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Does everyone have to go through English language testing?
Yeah. So residency. Yep. 90% of our resident pathways have English testing. Partnership doesn't. So if you're a partnership with New Zealander, no English testing. But in work visas, only skill level 4 to 5 roles require English testing. And the requirements are much lower. I think it's 4 in IELTS. So it's not such a high threshold to meet. The government kind of came up with this so that they could be certain that migrant workers knew what their employment agreement contained. that was their excuse for it. And I agree a little bit with that, I guess. But my focus is really on, do they have functional English to be able to do their job safely in New Zealand? That's the main thing. And I think having a threshold for just 4 to 5 occupations, yeah, okay, it might need to be expanded a little bit for other occupations. But yeah, it's there and there's a good reason for it. Yeah.
Cool. I'm getting text questions now as well for people that come here. We've got a couple of questions, and the question is, good afternoon. We know who this is from. Employee started in May 2023 as an automotive machinist, skill level 3 ANSCO. 323214, and the starting salary was $33.50 and an increase to $35 in May 2024. He got his NZQA level 4 qualification as an automotive machinist in Feb 2025. Will he be eligible to apply for the August Trades and Tech pathway?
Okay, I'm just going to rule him out, because he won't have enough time on his AEWV to do this. So he needs 4 years post-study, post-qualification work experience. And if his arrival was in May 2023, he doesn't have enough time on his current AEWV. Even with the 1 year extension, he doesn't have enough time. So he would be departing if that was the case. But yeah, the wage is fine. So he's got on the right wage, because it's just the median wage that they need for the trades and tech pathway. But it's that post qualification work study. So I'm going to say 99% of AEWV holders who are currently in New Zealand will not use the trades and technician pathway. It is hopeless for people who are in New Zealand. For new guys that are turning up and coming in now, which are very few, but it's starting to trickle in now. That's a part of our recruitment policy, is to look for people that have either bachelor's degrees or relevant level 4 or higher qualifications, so that they're possibly creating a easier pathway to residency. So yeah, this trades and tech one is not great for people who are already here, unless they had a qualification before they turned up.
And there's just a follow-on comment there. There is nobody in the automotive machinist industry that's paid the suggested median wage plus the 1.1, 1.3, 1.5 as an employee, and we cannot afford this rate. Of course, it's unsustainable. Yeah. Do you see this changing?
Not if National stay in government. And even Labour's spokesperson, Twyford, said that he wouldn't change immigration policy, which was, to me, that's a shambles of a comment. But yeah, I can't see it changing. They're using wage as a proxy to say somebody is skilled here, and they're using that median wage as a way of doing this. So no, I think they're sticking with this policy. A change of government, I can't see it happening. If National were to get in with another coalition with New Zealand First and ACT, New Zealand First and ACT are keeping the resident criteria quite tough. They do not want the numbers coming to New Zealand, and in fact, they probably want to reduce the work visa holders. So if National government alone, okay, you might see some more flexibility, but I don't think these will change. And you've got to bear in mind, especially with SMC, employment must be genuine, and a part of the genuine assessment is whether the wage is within market rates, because it's one indicator. If you paid a high wage for a job, it's one indicator that it might not be genuine. And so you do need to keep that in mind when looking at wages.
Yeah. And then there's just one more question there. What other pathway is available to him? Yeah. And what will he need?
So ANSCO 3 is is skilled migrant, but without a bachelor, it doesn't, or occupation registration, it doesn't work. So you are looking at 1.5 times the national median wage. What was it, 53 something? I have it on my computer. It's 52.50 per hour. Not realistic, right? So you look at the 1.1 times the national median wage, which is 38.50 at the moment, and you go, that's the next bump. You go to that, then you make sure they've got 5 years relevant work experience, and they do 2 years in with the higher wage, and that's probably the pathway. And that's the pathway for majority of AWV holders that are in New Zealand. Is going to be the new work experience pathway.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So one of the comments that I had through earlier was, and we see this often as well, as businesses, they're not accredited, so they're not set up to hire migrants, and they've had somebody who's been in New Zealand for a wee while on a visa come to them, and they want to hire them. So there's the investment and the time for the accreditation, the job check, and the visa, to take on this one person, but this one person may not have long left on their visa. So we see it on a regular basis. These lovely workers, and people are desperate to have them on board, but they've only got maybe 9 months or so left on their visas. So what you need to consider, putting my recruitment hat on, is when we do international recruitment, we're looking for guys, as Cam said, that have relevant experience, and also these bachelor degrees, English language skills, and we can get in guys depending on the ANSCO, but we might be able to recruit a guy for a business for a 5-year visa, and you would go through an accreditation, a job check, and an AUV, the same investment to get a 5-year visa, as opposed to that investment for a year or so. So it can get quite expensive if you're trying to help a person that's already in New Zealand that doesn't have much left on their visa, and they're going to have to leave New Zealand anyway, aren't they? Yeah,
they could be facing a stand down period for 12 months after their visa expires. So it's a serious consideration, especially when you find your own worker in New Zealand. You've got to think about that.
The stand down period means they have to leave New Zealand. That's what that means. We've got a question about back in the old days when the borders first opened, immigration in NZ were incredibly slow, and the process took 6 months to get businesses set up and registered. How fast is the process to go through an accreditation, a job check, and an AWV now? I mean, we're seeing things turning around in 24 hours, 48 hours, aren't we?
There's been some lightning quick applications. So the mood at the moment is it's very quick. That is for straightforward applications. So if you've got an accreditation application that's the business has been operating for more than 24 months, hasn't made a loss over that period, 1 to 2 days maybe for processing. It's very quick. Job checks, obviously, you got to advertise, so maybe that's 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the skill level of the job. Plus, maybe I'd give it maybe 1 to 3 weeks for processing a job check right now, of a good one where you've done good labour market testing. And then the AWVs, they're a little bit slower. I get a little bit frustrated with AWV processing, but probably 2 to 4 weeks for most to go through. The higher the skill level of the job, and the lower the risk of the nationality. So to give you an example, a British citizen with an office manager role or something along those lines is going to be considered quite low. So they are low risk. They're a friendly country, and it's a highly skilled job. So they can rely on the documentation and process a little bit quicker. Where if on the other side of that, they need to really look at the documents closely, and it takes a bit more time.
Cool. We've got a few more minutes. We've got another question that's popped up, but if anyone else has got any more questions, we're planning on wrapping this up promptly at 12:45. The final question from the same person is, how do they calculate work experience in New Zealand if the 1.1 is the next step?
So say you get your 1.1 times today, then we're looking at 2 years on that from today. It's simple. And you've got to be careful about the way immigration calculate salary. You know, I don't use salary or I don't recommend salary is used in AEWV whatsoever, or for residency, because you need to be paid the 1.1 times for each hour that they work. So you pay them a salary based on 40 hours, and you've calculated the salary is going to meet 1.1. Well, if they work 41 hours in a week, they do not meet. You know, their hourly rate is watered down by the fact they've completed another hour's work. And so you've got to be really, really careful. So salary, it's a no-go. It's really where I'm at, unless you are absolutely, you know, I've got some high-paid clients on salary. I have no problem with that, because there's no way they're going to water down their hourly rate. But if you're right on the cusp of the salary requirements, or the wage requirements, do not use a salary. Use a wage. Yeah, and I know you want to use a salary, but yeah, immigration instructions really, really clamp down on that side of things.
Yeah, cool. One other question was around finding workers themselves overseas. What do I need to look out for? I guess I can probably talk to a little bit of this. We see it in the recruitment team. When applicants are firing CVs through to New Zealand and they're offshore, there's a level of desperation in some countries. So there's a lot of falsified documentation, CVs, reference letters, previous employers, wage slips, all of that sort of stuff. So do be very careful. We've got people that say that they can, well, we don't, but there are people that say that they can do jobs and have done however many years of work experience. And when it comes to them actually, once they've landed in New Zealand and the person's got them on the tools and they can't do the job, it's incredibly problematic. So we use a partner. We've used a partner for over 10 years. It's the safest thing to do. We go through trade testing. We go through a really rigorous pre-employment vetting, verification, reference checking, every sort of process we can possibly do to find good workers. So yeah, so hopefully that helps. So look, we're going to wrap this up, guys.
Mandy had a quick question.
Can
I ask answer Mandy's question? Mandy had a question about residency pathways and wage thresholds for earthwork employees, right? So just really, really quickly, I'd take a look at the green list. That's the first thing I'd look at. So backhoe operator, bulldozer, grader, loader, paving, earth moving, excavator. If they're in any of those occupations, I'd look at the green list first, right? And going to just only looking back to February 2024, because the wage requirements do actually go back further than that. But you've got 36, 35. So between the 28th of Feb 2024 and the 17th of August 2025, that was the wage. So if they got that wage during that period, they worked there 2 years, they can apply for residency based on that. Obviously, English, health and character required. So the other wage threshold, there was 38.59 during August, so the 18th of August 2025 and the 8th of March 2026, they had to be on that rate to be able to meet it. And then from the 9th of March, it's gone to 40.25 per hour. So if they haven't hit those wage thresholds, or they're not in any of those occupations, I guess I'd probably be looking at the new the work experience pathway, and getting them up to 1.1 times at the rate. That would probably be the option. And just remember, if they are eligible for residency and they're applying before August, they do need that a little bump in the wage to get them up to the rate they require to apply. But hopefully in August that won't apply.
Cool, thank you. Okay, so as you can tell, there's a lot of questions, a lot of uncertainty, and there's certainly been a lot of changes this year, and it's only March. So look, Cameron's available for paid consultations. The team are available for if you have, regular needs for assistance, if you're doing it in-house, if you wanted to have, a plan set up with a monthly support to be able to call Cam or something like that. So let us know if you do need some help. We are here to help. So on behalf of the People Link Group team, we are really grateful for you being here today. Hope you all learned something fun about immigration, and we'll see you at the next Ask an Expert question. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.